What is up, guys? Mcdoubles back again with a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing a video on a brand new idea that I have actually for a custom class game mode that is tailored around Project Ascension, but really could be for any private server if they really wanted to. So, I hope you guys enjoy. I want to see some discussion in the comment section below, but without further ado, let's jump into the video.
Hey, listen!
So before I do this video, I do want to go over very quickly what my idea is and what my idea isn't. So my idea is not a complete restructuring of World of Warcraft. In fact, all it is a custom game mode for a custom class server that is already established. My idea is only going to affect the classes, and that is it. As for extra custom content, that is not what I'm talking about. But we're going to be establishing a better meta, less homogeny, a fresh game mode, and I would say an easy integration into the current Ascension framework, meaning this is something that could realistically happen in a very short time frame, which makes it very appealing to someone like me. So with that being said, let's jump right into the idea. So the main thing to keep in mind is that when you get into Project Ascension, you start off as a hero, meaning you don't actually have to pick a class. This is going to be a little bit different. You'll still start off as a hero, but as soon as you get into game, in your starter zone, you'll be presented with picking one of these starter classes. These starter classes are going to heavily affect the abilities that your class has a chance to get from the draft. And that's right, again, we're going to be using a draft pick mode for this particular game mode, meaning every time you choose an ability, you're going to choose from one of three choices, and you're just going to have to hope you choose the best one. What this means is that everybody's class will be slightly different, but we're going to give you some controlled randomness for once. And by doing this, I'm hoping to eliminate power creep, as well as this excessive requirement for people to all have life tap as an example, or for everybody to have divine shield or something like Cloak of Shadows for PvP. Things like that just take away from the game. It makes it too homogenous, and it makes it very hard to feel like you can counter people unless you're one of the 1%. So in order to do that, I've come up with the following 7 classes, although there would have to be more if we're accounting for healers as well as tanks, in which case you could probably add 3 extra classes. So for this video, I'm focusing only on the DPS varieties because there's simply too much to cover in one video, but if you guys like it enough, I will go into more detail with more stuff. So the first thing I want to look at is what my class philosophy is when I'm building these classes. So first of all, we're going to be using the traditional World of Warcraft abilities that are currently in Ascension WoW to build all of these classes, including the talent trees that are in Ascension WoW currently as well. So that's what's good. Most of the work is already done for us. It's just, how do we separate these things? How do we create new rules for them that completely change the game? And how can we use random enchants to reinforce class theme and create brand new play experiences that the majority of players will get the opportunity to partake in? That is what I'm trying to solve. So the class philosophy is that some mixing of abilities will happen. So for example, you might end up with multiple different classes having access to things like, let's say, Shadow Word Pain, maybe the Dark Magus and the Archer, because there will be a Shadow Hunter variant that we'll talk about later. Maybe they'll both have access to Shadow Word Pain in their arsenal. However, this mixing of abilities should be very minimal, and that means it will not be happening very often. That means you will never see an ability where all of the classes that I have created have priority for it, which is going to create a lot more diversity in a way that is less grindy and frustrating than maybe the current system could be. It's important to keep in mind, though, that none of these custom classes are going to look anything like the original classes. You will have access to abilities from other classes still. It's just going to be a little bit more honed in, a little bit more controlled randomness, a little bit less complete randomness, and we're going to chop off some of the overpowered stuff so that not every single person that you run up to has everything they could possibly need to beat you. So if you're missing just one thing, you just auto lose. Skill didn't matter. I want an environment where you can actually strategize, where you can actually think about what your opponent has and how you might be able to counter that. That's what makes World of Warcraft PvP good. The problem was always the classes themselves. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example of what I mean. So at level 1, you would choose Archer, Brigand, Sorcerer, Dark Magus, Warrior, Shapeshifter, or Crusader. And of course, when there are healing and tank classes in the game, those would be in the game as well for you to choose from. And you would know those are the healing classes and these are the tank classes in the description when you're choosing them. Okay, so back to the DPS classes. Let's say you select Archer. So by choosing Archer, you're then going to have the choice to choose between the Wrath Hunter specialization, Shadow Hunter, Beastmaster, Trapper, and Ranger specs. All of these are going to have slightly different playstyles, slightly different priorities, but they're all going to share the Hunter class as a priority, with some modifications, and we'll talk about that. But you're still going to be able to get things like Blink, It's just going to be less often than if you get something like Disengage. And with that being said, certain abilities, and we'll talk about this later on, you won't be able to get. So archers will have absolutely no access to Divine Shield, but Crusaders definitely will. So there's going to be some give and take, and that means you're going to be able to play around things based on who you're fighting against. And that also means power levels are going to come down dramatically. But there's still going to be variety, and I'll explain that more as we continue. So let's talk about some of the things we could expect to see from each specialization of archer that you could choose. So again, they're all based on current Ascension archetypes that now people are going to be able to pick directly and build towards from the beginning, which I think is overall going to lead to more player retention because it'll be less confusing, and direction, which believe it or not, I do think people like having a direction, but they also enjoy choice, which this is doing both. And there's so much room for balancing the game when you can affect who gets what. So we're going to go over, as you can see on the screen, some of the examples of what certain specs are going to be able to guarantee they have that other specs will not. So for example, Wrath Hunter, you're going to end up with stuff like Wrath and Wild Quiver, Poisons and Serpent Sting, Chimera Shots, and you're going to start off with the Wild Wrath Random Enchant. Now, I don't know how they're going to do this, but most of my classes are going to require some kind of random enchant to start off with because it's thematic for the class. Now, they can either turn them into some kind of glyph system, which I like the idea of, or they can just make sure that everybody starts with that specific random enchant already in their collection, or perhaps it turns into an ability like a passive and you just always have it. It doesn't matter, but it is essential. I do think they're not getting the most out of their brilliant legendary random enchant system, and that this game mode would allow them to do that. Again, with the Shadow Hunter moving on, you would have things like the Black Arrow ability, Shadow Form, Shadow Word Pain, Mind Blast for those instant Mind Blasts on a Shadow Word Pain tick, Dark Arrow, which is a random enchant that summons a skeleton on auto attack, and then of course you're also going to have your auto shot, right? So we're literally playing a Dark Shadow Hunter from the beginning, guys. Okay, keep that in mind with a lot of this stuff. So we're gonna have to make sure things are not overpowered at low levels, but I think it's definitely worth it. And I'll give you an example of what a class will look like at max and as they're leveling later on in the video. So let's continue down the list. Beastmaster, you would automatically start with Tame Beast. You will get things like Kill Command, Beast Mastery, which lets you tame exotic pets, and the Bear Attack RE, summoning multiple bears to fight for you. It was a meme that turned into a broken random enchant that is now kind of, I think, just normal average level, and now it's going to be for the Beastmaster class. Trapper, right? So trappers are going to get access to every single trap in the game. I would like to see Trap Launcher, which, you know, they do have the capability of doing because they're using a Wrath of the Lich King server, but you know what? If they can't, that's okay. But also Explosive Shot would be something the Trapper gets. So you're putting down traps, you're blowing shit up, it's really cool. And then Ranger, that's going to be your traditional Lone Wolf Marksman, Aim Shot, Arcane Shot, Steady Shot, True Shot, okay, and the Deadly Aim random enchant guaranteed as well. So what might a max level character look like? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the Archer class and the Beastmaster specialization and get an idea of what they might have, what they might get at certain levels, how 1 AE abilities might work, and how some new concepts are going to be integrated with this game mode. So the first concept we have is, first of all, your level 1 starts, right? The Beastmaster would start with Tame Beast and Kill Command, which of course would need to be adjusted and given multiple ranks so that it can actually scale properly. Now, you're going to have something called locked in abilities. These are things that you automatically get for picking that specialization, and they're always going to be thematic and essential to the, you know, class theme, class archetype that you're going for. In this case, we only have 3, right? And that's how it's typically going to be, probably only around 3. In this case, we have Mend Pet at level 13, Intimidation at level 31, and you are guaranteed the Beast Mastery Exotic Pets talent at level 60. It's going to pick itself for you. So in this case, Beast Mastery Exotic Pets is a guaranteed level 60 ability, but not every class will force you into a certain ability at level 60. So do keep that in mind. In this case, it's to reinforce a theme of the Beastmaster to force Beastmasters to use exotic pets, which is honestly something you don't see very much because why would anybody really choose it when you could do other things? Okay, so only look at levels 4 to 60 in the brackets I've set up right here. That's what we're going to focus on here. You would actually start getting new abilities as early as level 4. So every 3 abilities, so from level 1, 1, you go to 2, 3, and then at 4, you get your first new one, then at 7, at 10, etc. Level 10 and 28 would be when you get your 1 AE choices. It would be things like Conjure Food, Conjure Water, Slow Fall, Mind Vision, Eye of Kilrog, stuff like that. And then at level 60, you pick one level 60 talented ability, nothing else. So this is an example of what you might expect to see at max level on your character with the current system. You could roll better than this, you could roll worse, but you'll notice that there is a definite focus on hunter-based abilities. You'll be given more hunter abilities as your choices, and less focus on stuff from other classes, but they're still there, and you can still make some pretty impactful choices with things like Rockbiter weapon in here particularly, and you could potentially roll something like Blink, right? In this example, you don't even have things like Disengage, which you do technically have a heightened chance to get a priority roll since you're playing an archer class. So do keep that in mind, guys. But one thing you should notice is that the power level has gone down, but you're still a unique custom class that's going to fulfill a theme, and of course balancing is going to be a hell of a lot easier as a result of this as well. And keep in mind, random enchants still exist. There's still a lot of customization with that as well, including the different talents you can get, which I will not be touching. You'll still have free access to any of the traditional talents every level starting at level 10, just like the current system. So in other words, the current system for talents basically doesn't change in terms of when you get talent points and where you could put them. So this idea is kind of like the weighted ability system that we have now, but kind of on steroids. So if you choose Archer, you're going to have access to like Mongoose Bite, Raptor Strike, Counterattack, and Wing Clip with an increased chance. Of course, numbers are subject to change. Increased chance to get things like Arcane Shot, Concussive Shot, and all of the aspects and other hunter abilities as well. You'll have an increased chance to get them. But again, you can still get other things, which is going to lend to the diversity of the custom class concept, but still give you a little bit of control on what your character becomes. And again, it also is going to severely limit power creep and just overall power levels of the classes. It's going to be very difficult for somebody to random all day, every day, constantly make new characters, constantly roll and get something stupid broken, because in many cases, you won't even have access to certain abilities in the first place. And again, it's going to give you a headache when you're guaranteed to get certain things, basically, because of the increased weight. So you'll be rolling those and drafting those more often rather than, you know, things that are more overpowered. And do keep in mind, the Beastmaster concept, again, you can get more things. It's a little bit more on the bland side compared to other ideas that we could talk about. Like, for example, when we talked about the Shadow Hunter before, there are plenty of different specs that completely change how you play WoW and give you a more custom and fresh experience, but at the same time, we're still narrowing down that niche, we're lowering power levels a bit, and we're also going to give the devs an opportunity to be able to actually, you know, balance this game for PvP to some degree, because we're going to be severely getting rid of things like gap closers for every single class, interrupts for every single class. And this brings me to my idea of exclusive abilities, which are going to be abilities that are traditionally either very, very strong or make a crazy big difference if you have them, and we're going to make it to where not every class can get these abilities. So obviously every, you know, different iteration is not set in stone, but a good example would be Divine Shield is going to be Crusader exclusive, or perhaps Crusader and maybe whatever ends up being the holy, you know, healer class. But nobody else would be able to get Divine Shield, and they wouldn't be guaranteed that ability. They would just be able to roll it at all. So you could still not get that, but you'd be one of the only two that could get it. And so you would always know if somebody is playing that kind of spec, they might have Divine Shield. But you would also know everyone else does not have Divine Shield, but the same restrictions aren't going to be there for things that are kind of similar, like maybe Hand of Protection, which you could still get. Maybe interrupts in general, right? And I think heals in general. Maybe warriors just straight up can't roll a heal. Or maybe even brigands too, which we'll talk about in a moment. And so you'll just know if you fight one of them, they don't have a castable heal. They have to have some other kind of defensive cooldown or talented ability. Like, hey, Desperate Prayer, there's stuff out there, something like that to help them. Okay, so for the rest of this video, I'm going to literally walk you through the entire process, and we'll see exactly how this works, and then we'll conclude the video. First, you choose your path at level 1, both your class and your specialization. So let's say you chose Wrath Hunter at level 1. Your ability core, so what you start the game with, guys, would be Wrath, Serpent Sting, Auto Shot, the Wild Quiver talent fully talented out for you, and the Wild Wrath Random Enchant. Again, this Wild Wrath Random Enchant should be immediately usable, which means you have the very basic core of your build as soon as you start off. So you're immediately living the theme, you're immediately playing with it, and that, hey man, that means at level 20 PvP is going to be very, very variety filled, so to speak. So after you choose your class and your spec, every 3 levels you're going to get one new draft pick of 3 abilities. So essentially, you're going to get 3 abilities shown to you, and you're going to have certain priorities set up based on the class that you chose, which means your draft will always look different than a draft from a player who chose a different class and spec than you. And not just that, but you will have agency over, the path that your character takes. But it's still not going to be a direct choice, which means, power levels are theoretically kept in check. Now, these abilities, as I'm trying to imply, would be relevant for your spec and will not be completely random. So back to the archer example, your level 4 options may include concussive shot, hunter's mark, or aspect of the hawk, but you're not guaranteed anything, you're only given a choice. So it may be possible to miss out on an ability simply because you didn't choose it and it somehow never came up again. As for talents, every level starting at level 10, just like the current system, you will get one talent essence. You will have access to all the talent trees, but the potency of each tree is going to depend entirely on your chosen class. That is going to naturally steer you in a certain direction. However, it does leave room for you to still take things from other classes. So for example, if you were building a hybrid somehow, you could still take mental quickness if you want in the enhanced shaman tree to convert your strength or agility into some extra spell power. That's very, very useful, and that's what I mean by custom, right? Yes, you're in a direction, you're steering you a certain way, but you can still use tools from other classes to fully diversify your particular character. Now, for talents, it's also important to keep in mind that some classes will start with talents that will count against their total talent essence count. So, for example, and keep in mind, the idea is to start strong. If you started with Moonkin, so you chose the Shapeshifter class, and you went with the Moonkin specialization, which is essentially, druid abilities, but it's going to focus entirely on nature abilities as well. You would get your first talent, assuming that was your only talented ability that you started with, at level 11 instead of level 10. And that's because that ability traditionally costs 1 talent point. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you the perks of the game mode, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish it off with something I forgot. So I'm sorry guys, but this is going to be where I tell you guys about the Brigand class, a little bit more complex, only a little bit of a taste of it though, and then we'll end the video there. So again, I'm just going to read off my perks of the game mode. First of all, the power level comes down, but diversity stays up. That's huge, right? Hopefully we can maybe long term, get rid of this resilience garbage, because I'm sick of hitting for like a 600 pyroblast. That really, really sucks. We can have strong abilities, we can have sick combos if there's ways to counter them, if there's diversity that is not homogenous, diversity. And that is to say, yeah, that guy has pummel, that guy has kick, and that guy has counterspell, but they all have interrupts, right? So that's the homogeny. So we're going to get less of that, better, higher, more fun play styles, power level comes down, right? Easier for the devs to balance because there's more controlled randomness, fresh meta on a server, hopefully, right? Fresh approach to PvE because now you have genuine class concepts to plan around, and they're all going to have different perks. More approachable for new players, right? Because it's going to be less confusing, so we've mentioned that. You get to show off the cool random enchants you created in a unique way, and that one goes out to Ascension themselves. All of these ideas, I would say at least 80% of them actually are going to require random enchants to be usable from the get-go in order to open up that build diversity and that custom class feeling, before level 40, man, like level 1. It's like level 40 in the current game that you get any kind of diversity at all. And even then, you have to get lucky. So we get to show that off. You get to create a custom class server with the abilities you've already created. This is once again at Ascension, so that's good. You already have everything you need for this. It's just implementing it. And then lastly, everything else stays the same. So if you want to play World of Warcraft, this is going to be World of Warcraft with custom classes. The one thing I do want to show you guys is my concept for the Brigand. Again, this is like complete top-down, still got to work out the details idea. But the idea is that you would have 5 different ways that you can spec. So a Brigand We're looking at people that would use cloth or leather armor, possibly male, probably not. Anyway, though, I have the Demacari, which is like a Roman word for somebody that's dual wielding. That's the only complex-ish one there. So they would have things like Bloodthirst and Whirlwind, Mortal Strike as options, Ambidextrous as the random enchant. That's a pretty sick one that requires you to be dual wielding, and it's one that I would like to see on a class like the Demacari, which would be one-handed dual wielding. They wouldn't have the ability to go Titan's Grip, so I think that would be pretty sick. The Rogue concept, right? So this is one I'm always going to keep some that feel close to home for people who like that traditional experience but just want to play maybe with new opponents or new concepts in mind with their allies. But anyway, the Rogue, Stealth, Ambush, Sinister Strike becomes Backstab if you choose the Rogue spec right off the bat. Shadow Dance is going to be something that you have to get at level 60, and Assuaging Shadows would be a random enchant that you would be given from the beginning. Mageblade, that's where we can get things like Storm Strike and Lava Lash right off the bat, okay? Something that's crazy to think about, dude. Storm Strike and Lava Lash right off the bat. Hybrid right through the gate, and you get to choose between Lightning Bolt, Fireball, or Frostbolt, right? Going for that Maelstrom weapon, which I didn't put here, but that would also be a talent that you started with as Maelstrom weapon, so you can be a true hybrid from the beginning. And of course, this one's going to go in really interesting ways. You could end up picking up the Hot Hands random enchant if you go Fire. You can end up picking up Ice Slash as the random enchant if you go Frost, or you can keep what you've got if you go Lightning Bolt and just go hard on maybe trying to snag Earth Shock or something like that. There's many different ways, and I love that. The Barbarian SS would turn into Hemorrhage. That's pretty sick. They're going to focus on bleeds, so Rend, Hemorrhage, Overpower, Charge. That's your Rend OP build. And then the Marauder, Execute, Intercept, Killing Spree, Double Down as your random enchant that you start with. So another guy that's dual wielding, making use of the Sinister Strike, going for the Executes as a concept, Intercept. Remember, you have to use these things because they're given to you, so it steers you in a certain direction. What's good about this is we're going to get abilities to be used that otherwise would have never been used because we're using more overpowered things instead. And that's what I like to see. Many things you just have to imagine if it was balanced properly, okay? Because a lot of these things are going to require new ranks of certain spells to be added in order for them not to be broken at low levels. Because at max level, this is fine. There's way more overpowered stuff than anything I'm showing you here. What this really does is diversifies the leveling process, which in a game like Ascension is exactly what you want to see, and then adds longevity to the end game by giving you things to shoot for, concepts to go for, new builds to attempt, without it being entirely random and you having to wait till max to get any kind of customization at all, because really it's pretty bland until you get to max on Ascension. And that sucks when it's all about leveling, right? It's only bland because all the cool stuff is a random enchant or requires level 60. So anyway, guys, yeah, that was a long and pointless video. I don't even know how it was this long. Hey, I'm not a game designer, but I play a lot of games, and honestly, if I could just talk this through instead of feeling like I need to condense everything as quickly as I can into a video, I could get much more in detail with this. I can make it much better. I just think that the concept is enough to throw out to you guys and see what you think. So with that being said, guys, that is going to be the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like and to subscribe. I've got a Nature Hunter playthrough coming out for you guys because you voted for it in the most recent poll. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Mcdoubles out.